Excellent, here we go. Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so kindly for joining us at Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Car Johnson, and tonight I'm very excited to welcome Bruce McKay to celebrate, that's him, that's the guy, to celebrate his graphic novel, The Tengu, Act A, The Prisoners. Let's give a hand for Bruce.
Yeah.
You know him, you love him. Inner Sunset's on Bruce McKay. Thank you for joining us both here in person, where you are right now, and online. Hello, online audience. I'm waving at a camera if you cannot see. We are broadcasting from San Francisco. We open each of our events with a land acknowledgement, which is also particularly pertinent to Bruce's book, which we do for every event, but it's particularly pertinent to Bruce's book. We are operating on unceded Ramecha Ohlone land, and we think that acknowledgement requires action, and so we encourage you to donate either your time or monetary means to an Indigenous organization each time you hear a land acknowledgement. We have information about the Ramecha Ohlone Land Trust at the back desk if you are interested in how to participate in this project of rematriation. I have very brief business before we get to the heart of the hour. Now's a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. What do you think about picture taking, Bruce? I didn't ask you. Is picture taking okay?
Shoot away.
Shoot away. It's good. Just don't take a call in the middle of the event. We would encourage you not to do that. Please do check out our full event calendar online at greenapplebooks.com. We have a really great season ahead of us, including the event you are currently attending. The restroom is behind me. It is available after the event and not during the event for obvious reasons. If you need to know how to get there, do let me know and I will gladly help you. Oh, thank you, Brendan. For light purposes.
There you go.
We have copies of Bruce's books available at the front register. You can find them there. If you've been here before, you've certainly heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the author who put so much work into making this book, and then you get to have a book, which may be the best part. This is a limited edition run, too, of the first part of the Tengu, so, and you'll sign them, I imagine,
Yeah.
if people want. So, pretty sweet opportunity to go ahead and support not only this independent artist, but also an independent bookstore. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the author who's joining us tonight. First, Bruce McKay is a graphic novelist living in the Inner Sunset District of San Francisco. He graduated from the San Francisco Art Institute and recently completed the graphic novel intensive online program offered by the Sequential Arts Workshop. In 2021, his graphic novel, The Tengu, 30 Vignettes, was published, and his current book, The Tengu Act A, The Prisoners, is the reason we are here tonight. Let's give one more hand for Bruce McKay.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you so much, Car. Okay, this will take about an hour. No, it'll take about 30 seconds a slide, and there are 48 slides, so do the calculation. And that's where we're at. Okay, so this project has been going on for 19 years. What the whole point of it was, I wanted to get a story told first before I had any final form of it. So I'm taking each one of the forms that it's going to take one at a time. The first one is a graphic novel, or a series of graphic novels. The first one came out in, let's see, we're going to do the slides now, so if you want to just tap the, yeah, take to the next one. This is the book. This is the origin document, you would call it, the 30 vignettes. And what a vignette is a slice of life from the plotline. There's a print run of 100 copies like this one. Only 100 have been made because I figure I can always improve the second edition. I'm just learning how to do all this stuff, so it's kind of a challenge to to do it the best I can. It's a prelude to all the 13 subsequent books. The first of this series will be presented tonight, Act A, The Prisoners. The format is a full-page illustration on the left page and a short story on the right page, and just rinse and repeat 30 times. So this next slide is going to be, here is Turtle Hill. That's what we call it. People who live here call this Turtle Hill. On a map, it's called Grandview Park. And the storyline is called Round Top because it's shaped like a, well, obvious reasons, right? It was first seen by me in 2004, 42 years after I first saw it on my way to high school out in the avenues called St. Ignatius. That '04 visit kicked off my idea to situate the story in the city of my birth. And this is the home of the Tengu. The previous slide is his view from the bench of the North Summit. That bench, parenthetically, was dedicated to a young lady whose last name was Jewel Dum. She was killed in a traffic accident at 18 years of age. Excuse me. Next slide. This map you will see if you go to the Dion Museum on the 9th floor of the Hammond Tower, however you pronounce it. It's about 8 feet by 10 feet, and it's a wonderful map, and because it's copyrighted, I didn't use it in my book. What I did was, next slide, make a map of my own. This map will change throughout the 13 books of the first volume that I have planned. Act A, B, C, all the way through to M. And so each episode is going to include more and more characters and more gods, because that's what each one of these parks that we call parks is actually considered a tribal land of each one of these clans that live across the city. In my story, the Bay Area is situated at the thinnest part of a barrier separating our world from that of the bird people. The Enclave, as the characters in the Tengu story refer to the Bay Area, is a place of refuge for the bird gods of Earth, like the Phoenix, Thoth, Horus, Garuda. The gods in my story are the very same gods as our bird gods. More parks will be added to this map with each new book as new characters are introduced, and on this world next door to our own, there are no birds and no people, just bird people and their gods, for now. All lands and resources are in the same locations as here on Earth. The next slide. Okay, these are the different locales across town where all the deities are located. And what I'm not showing here, because we can't see them here, are the eggs. These are 30 feet tall eggs, roughly 30 feet tall, that house each one of the deities. So the Phoenix has her egg at the top of the Sutro Tower, that you see over there. And each one of these gods, you know, you would say there are no atheists in this world. Everybody can see, where they are. And so they can even converse with them if they're like in between parts of sleep, right? On this world next door to ours, all lands and resources are in the same. Okay, next slide. Here is the Dion Museum. That's what we call it. They call it Great Ghost House because we are known as the ghosts. Because they never see us. They just see our statues and all our buildings and everything. Because what happens, whatever we build that wouldn't exist if it weren't for humans shows up in their world after one new moon cycle. So if you were to say, for instance, open your front door to your house, it would disappear to them. So from their viewpoint, there are a bunch of these structures that have these open doors that we can just walk in and check out. The problem is, if you happen to be there during the new moon, and say you're walking in an area that has a brand new street in it, but it hasn't appeared yet, but you're out there, it appears, and you're in the street. So it could be bad. So everything we make shows up in their world, if it sits still long enough. Almost all the deities are visible to all of the clans. For about a century, the deities' eggs sit where they are until a 10-year period called an awakening, during which the gods are free to walk around and talk to their devotees and tell them how things are. None of the bird people are quite sure why the deities pick their locations. Like, why did he pick that directly beneath that building, directly over that building there, which hadn't been built back in the early 20th century when they had their period of awakening? We don't know. They don't know. I know. Maybe. Okay. Next slide. Okay, this is a Poro mask. What this is, well, in 2005, the Dion Museum reopened at its new site. This mask, used by the Mono tribe in Liberia for boys' initiation into adulthood, is featured in the African art collection area on the second floor. This is an important inspiration for a major device of the story. This is that things we make show up in the Enclave every new moon if they've sat still since the last new moon. That's how close the two worlds are to each other. Next slide. Sorry about my throat, it's just kind of tightening up. So this one over here, she is the vizier, the head chief advisor to the mayor, who is a great blue heron over here. That's a scarlet ibis, so that's what they're based on. What are they doing? Well, let's see. He's a great blue heron, and the guy who answers to the Tengu, as well as the guy who gets to tell everybody under him what to do and when. She's an ibis, and like all ibises, she's a curator of magic and knowledge in general, and specifically charged with figuring us ghosts out. So the ibis and heron clans are at the top of the society and are collectively known as waiters. Next slide. Here we see the Tengu in his capacity as steward of all the clans in the enclave, inside as well as outside, but mainly the inside clans. The inside clans are clothed, right? And they're assigned a role in society as well as clothing that indicates their clan and its connection to other clans of that type. Parenthetically, this is based on an Ottoman Empire concept that if you're a cobbler, your kid's going to be a cobbler, your father's more than likely a cobbler, and you're expected to dress that way at all times. And this is a thing that was kind of like something that reflected the cohesion of society. Let's see. The outside clans are unclothed. They're free to roam the enclave and worship their deities after their own fashion, but without access to the benefits of the insiders. So they're here. They're able to venerate their gods, but they aren't allowed access to some of the cool things that the inside clans are working on. Next slide. So who is this guy? Well, he's originally a member of the Raven clan and an adherent of the Thunderbird. So they all have patrons. When they're going to become a steward, they have to have somebody who says, this guy's cool. You know, he's good for the job. He left his family to become a steward of the Enclave 100 years ago. Is granted a lifespan 5 times that of his Raven peers, as was his immediate family, to whom he longs to return as he's nearing the end of his tenure as steward. And his job is to keep the clans in harmony and hopefully from killing each other, and fulfilling their duties as members of a larger society until the return of the other deities, and there are 12 of them. Next slide. Okay, this is Raven, and the first sign that ghosts have discovered his kind. This is from 30 vignettes. This is one of the plates. The Enclave came to be situated here in the Bay Area largely due to this scene. In the Pacific Northwest, a totem pole which is phased into the world of the bird people is discovered by some Raven apprentices. They know about us. We must leave this place. Next slide. Turtle Hill. Again, we talked about this. Grandview Park, if you look at the map, is round top to them. Now at the top, you can see a little purple egg. And that's the chosen abode of this guy here, the Tengu. It's different. It's this egg-shaped hut has capabilities the other deities' eggs lack. It has a face, it has emotions, it has the ability to speak with its master. A major character in the storyline. Anyway, next slide. Here we have the Tengu and Thoth, or Toth, or Toth, or however you pronounce it, I don't know. Other deities can take on astral form and leave their eggs and visit the Tengu from time to time. Here, Thoth comments on the impending meeting of the two worlds. The Tengu insists we must not welcome them here. Okay, next slide. Here's Frank's hut. So he figures he's getting impatient with the ancient steward and is of a mind to confront him. So he has his builders create a hut which will stare at the Tengu's hut on the other side of the inner sunset. It's a straight shot. You can see it from Turtle Hill. You can look straight over at Stowe Lake and Strawberry Island on top, or Blue Heron Lake and Strawberry Island in the center of it. So it's on the summit of that. That's where he built this hut. The scene takes place on the summit of what we call Strawberry Island and Blue Heron Lake, which we just find with Frank, this guy, or his egg anyway. Next slide. Okay, this is the seed event of the book that's I'm talking about today, Book A. This is all these vignettes. So this vignette here, this guy's telling these guys, the doves, that hey man, you got to watch for them falcons. They killed off all the pigeons. So the pigeon clan was affiliated, but they eradicated them all. Well, they ate them in direct violation of the Tengu's basic law. We are not food to one another. It's kind of our basic law too, but I won't go there. This is how the falcons became prisoners in my first book. Okay, here an owl convinces the doves that they should forsake their inside clan status and take martial training from the blackbirds to defend themselves against the falcons. You can imagine how that goes. The Owl clan see the impending awakening as a chance to seize power over all the clans. Next one. What follows on is a harsh regimen to get the doves martial in short order. The scene takes place at Glen Canyon, domain of the owls, also the real-life domain of great horned owls. If you want to see them in the city, this is a place to go. In the background, there's Glen Ridge Co-op Nursery School. You see the sign there. It also serves as a home base for the Silver Tree Day Camp, where I did time in 66 and 67. It was harsh. Next slide. So this is the schema or structure of the clans, and the clans and the gods. So the outer ring is all the gods. There's 12 of them. The outside clans are, well, outside, and the inside clans are, okay. It's a framework of how the deities and the inside and outside clans relate to one another. And so this is part of a reader's guide that I produced, a booklet which covers the characters and basic concept of the storyline. Next slide. This is divine intervention, right here. This takes place, any of you recognize this place? It's called the Terrell Sky Space. I didn't give you much to recognize, but it's in the sculpture garden in the De Young Museum. And so I picked that as a place where the ibis would like to study their scrolls and our books. Here, Thoth, the Egyptian god of knowledge, magic, and writing, recognizes a scholar's zeal and rewards young Hada with a sampling of the Book of Record. This is an amazing document. It was written for the World's Fair in 1939 in New York. And basically it's a time capsule, 5,000 years. From now, it's supposed to preserve humankind's culture. And shows even how you use the different parts of your mouth to produce the English language. Next slide. These are the cranes. When they come into town, look out. Here's a rare effort at inking with a brush. The cranes are heralds of the next awakening. Their dancing awakens the Rook, this guy, situated beneath San Bruno Mountain at the other end of the peninsula. And it's not just a cutaway, that's scale. This guy's huge. And so that kind of like shows you how I set up the different characters in this book. I take an actual picture, a photograph of an area, and I draw the characters out, and I superimpose them over that. And I don't pay much respect to the shadowing, because that's a level of difficulty that will slow the book down. So if I have a staff of workers, you know, can work under me, I can produce something that's really going to rock. But for now, this is what it looks like. Next slide. Oh, could you go back to that last one? The only reason I'm asking that is I just want to tell you a little bit about this. Their dancing awakens the Rook, situated beneath San Bruno Mountain. The crane's arrival is met with a mix of eager anticipation and dread of the return of the deities to the Enclave. I mean, these guys are 30 feet tall. You can't help but look up to them. This event has yet to happen in the storyline, but it's happened before every awakening that there's been, about once a century. Next slide. This is the Tengu and his patron, the Thunderbird. Now, I should mention something. These bird people, and this may shock you, are not Christians. They're pagans. They're polytheists, right? To us, it's Mount Davidson Cross. To the bird people, it's arms open wide. That's exactly what it looks like. So, like Raven, Thunderbird originated in the Pacific Northwest. The clans do recognize this motif in some of the Enclave's largest structures, well, churches, right? And the Ibis have their theories about the Thunderbird's importance to the ghosts, as they call us. Next slide. That's my hand. Over downtown. There's another 30 vignettes plate. It's starting with Mission Dolores, across the street from the house where I grew up. Structures and paved streets have radiated outward over the past 200 plus years, facing in during each new moon. Only the Hawk clan, out of all these clans, only the Hawk clan are brave and intrepid enough to enter our homes in search of human-made artifacts that they can put to use. Next slide. Anybody recognize this place? The Bean. Okay, the Beanery was a place where I wrote most of the stuff, right? I see a lot of you out there. Yeah. At my favorite table in my favorite cafe, the Beanery, just one block away, our human protagonist, the geneticist Tamiko, and her fiance Kenji discuss his discovery of Next Door as his company, the Corpus, refers to the world of the bird people. They want that world and they want it now. She's first generation Japanese American. He's Nisei, or second generation. Next slide. So the Corpus intrudes. It's what they do best. POV is Irina's, the chief strategist in the takeover of San Francisco. Irina seeks Tamiko for research on a cure for avian flu, or so she says. For now, Tamiko works at the California Academy of Sciences, but it's being purchased and occupied by the Corpus along with all of Golden Gate Park. It's just one of several big ticket purchases across the city, including the zoo, the Presidio, and a couple other places. Next slide. The Corpus. Okay, that's their logo. That's the son of the CEO, and that's his girlfriend, Irina. Aiden's the son of Magnus, head of the Corpus, whose logo hovers overhead. Irina is a long neck. Do I need to point it out? Point out the obvious. A side effect of a particular mutation that allows her to process strategic information with maximum efficiency. Aiden's people have designed prosthetic talons and beaks for infiltration of Next Door. Here they're trying them on. Next slide. And here's the plan in action. Here at Golden Gate Heights Park, Aiden and Irina reach out to Kluik, he's the head man of the Eagle clan. The Corpus first attempt to appeal to the clan they see as the top of the clan hierarchy. They figure they're Eagles. They got to be the bosses, right? The spoiler, it ends badly. Next slide. The Tengu reaches out. Back up on Round Top again. Tamiko, freshly dismissed from Corpus employee, they have everything they need from her, ponders her situation. Tamiko might not know the import of her research of the Corpus, but the Tengu does. You're working for me now. So the Tengu reads her thoughts like a newspaper and decides she'll be his eyes and ears among the ghosts. She's invited up to his hut for tea and learns of her new gig after a bit of genial intimidation. Next slide. Here's Kizar of the Hawks. We'll talk about that later. Our main protagonist among the bird people, immature in more ways than one, that's Garuda. He's a war god. He's granting his symbol to the hawk child Kizar, who doesn't realize it yet. The sigil or symbol designates him as the next steward of the Enclave, infuriating the Eagle clan. You know, hey, Garuda's an eagle like us. Why does Hawk get his sigil? So this background photo was taken at Stern Grove, site of another childhood prison term of mine, Pine Lake Camp, summer 65. Next slide. Kizar. A little on the nose or beak, isn't it? No, as it turns out. It's pretty close to the sound a red-tailed hawk makes. And this is how I got a lot of the names of my characters. Find a spelled-out rendering of each species call, then shift it slightly to generate names. So a bald eagle's call is more like a gurgling cackle. So we get Kluik, Cree, and so on. Next slide. Kizar meets Tamiko. This is the final plate I'm going to show you. Here's the vignette where the two first meet on 12th Avenue across the street from Golden Gate Heights Park. He's just thrown that spear into her house's window and is coming to retrieve it. The rest of the storyline will heavily involve these two characters. She on the run from the Corpus, and he growing into his role as future steward of the Enclave, just as everything falls apart. Next slide. Okay, I did a gig as a stationary engineer at the old California, not the old one, but the standby California Academy of Sciences on Howard Street back in 2008, when the last time the world fell apart. So I was there in graveyard shift, and as the chief engineer told me, your time is your own. So, you know, if you finish your rounds and stuff, you got, well, the entire library of the California Academy of Sciences are drawn. So all those drawings that you see here are cribbed from different books that kind of give me an idea of what these different species look like. Let's see. I drew these in 2008. Prelude to a set of character designs you're about to see for the graphic novel. Each bird drawn here became or will become a deity or a representative of a particular clan. Next. And here's another one. So that's the same thing, basically. Next one after that. Here's the first of character designs. Here's the Tengu in formal wear. for like the convocations. Every third full moon they have a convocation, or a convo, as they call it. He wears a scarf of office, robe, fan, crest. Down here is a young healer, Uke, apothecary extraordinaire. Ospreys are the physicians of this world. Next slide. Here are Kezar and Keats, his mom. The Hawk clan is charged with hunting smaller game than the prey of their overlords in the Eagle clan. Their duty also involves, like I said, going into ghosts' houses, our houses, and retrieving items possibly of use to the clans at large. Keats is Kezar's mother, and especially adept gatherer of human-made artifacts, as we'll see when we see their hut in a bit. Next slide. Character design, the leaders. These are, well, there's the mayor, this Frank. He's the head of the whole shoot match, except for the Tengu, who he takes orders from when he feels like it. Down here is Wark, who's the head of the, he's an owl, a great horned owl. He's basically the alpha citizen of the outside clans. And let's see where we are. Next slide. This is a concept sketch. These are sketches that give you an idea of how you want the characters to interact visually. So it can be something that's physical, some action that they do, that you can put on a caption. Tengu loses it in front of the entire audience, that type of thing, which you'll see later on in 2 slides. These concept drawings give me an idea of how I want the characters to look in action. Push beyond all tolerance, the Tengu disperses the clans in a fit of rage. This is a scene I planned for the latter part of this series of books, so I guess you could call this a spoiler. He loses it. That's no big news. He loses it all the time. This scene takes place at the band shell. You can see the Lift Every Voice up there. At the band shell, like all the convocations, every third full moon toward the end of each season, with representatives from all inside clans in attendance. Okay, next slide. Here's a typical interior of a Hawk hut. Okay. In this scene, Mama Keats and Papa Us, that's his name, apostrophe U-S-S, by the way, with an umlaut over the U, discuss with Kezar the recent change in attitude on the part of the Eagles. Around their hut's walls are skulls of their prey, items purloined from our houses, a dartboard and a mirror, and their various utensils and weapons, as well as carcasses of recent kills. There's a door in the cellar. There's a door to the cellar in the center of the floor. It becomes important later in the story. Next slide. There's another concept sketch, the third one, third of 4, I think. This scene is on the bench atop Turtle Hill. Here the Tengu explains the political situation in the Enclave, one of chaotic squabbling while the ghosts, us, put the squeeze on the world of the bird people. At the same time, the deities are about to come back. That's all the deities right there. They're different, various visages. Let's see, next slide. Here, the horror of the Hawk Child's situation starts to set in. Trust me, you will learn to hate this job. And he goes on to say, honestly, I don't understand what grew to season you, but no matter. Your training starts first thing tomorrow. And next slide. This is the cover of the present book, the first of 13 planned books, altogether comprising the first of 3 volumes. The working title of this first volume is The Last Convocation. For the time being, I'll let the image of a falcon brandishing a kitchen knife against a spear-wielding dove serve as a warning to any parents thinking this is safe for kids. But an editor may insist on an advisory graphic as a future date. Next slide. Thumbnails. These are thumbnails. They're informal to the point of crude drawings made tiny just to get a sense of where the elements go on a page and also keep from getting too precious with minor details. As it is, these are a bit overworked. I had dialogue next to the panels in which they'll be placed. It's more pronounced on the right-hand page, you can see there. Next slide. Okay, here's a rough, here's a comp. Same page, different purposes. On the left, a page about half the size of the final composition, still crudely rendered for the sake of expediency. On the right, a comprehensive layout, or comp, serves to give the final version, although it might not be all that final, before taking it to a Bristol board, which is an extra stiff 14 by 17 sheet of paper for renderings in blue pencils because they don't show up on scanned documents, so they'll fade out when you do the final penciling. Finally, an ebony graphite pencil is used to give me a strongly contrasting set of foreground elements. Next slide. And here's the final version. So in producing this page, I resized photos of the polo ground to the panel's dimensions. Then in Photoshop, I superimposed the pencils over the background photo and inked and shaded the characters to give what you see here. Not every panel has a background. It took me a while to appreciate this. The earlier Tengu tales I'd drawn had in each panel a background photo or a penciled rendering of a photo. You don't need to, right? Tell the story. The approach I chose for the final art was no drawn backgrounds, all black and white throughout the book, unlike the 30 vignettes. You don't see color in it. And hand lettering throughout, except for cover graphics. Like I couldn't hand letter that the Tengu thing that you saw on the cover. Next slide. So after much cogitation in the wonderful state of Oregon this May, I came up with a new schema or new schedule that would take me away from the 20 books you see here down to 13. So that's just to give you an idea of the finer than frog hair distinctions I'm making about all the different elements of this story. Next slide. Previews for Act B, next book. Okay, in my next book, the action moves to Stern Grove. That's the stage. The Duck Clan, master craftspeople and performing artists are about to have some rude visitors. And the Grove is a special place for me as well. Here's where I learned in 1974 how to appreciate the natural spaces and parks of San Francisco as a young art student at CCSF. Next slide. So this is Act C. This is 2 books from now. Repercussions from events in Acts A and B continue to ripple outward across the enclave. Here, the Tengu is upbraided by his patron deity, the Thunderbird, who shouts at him from a scroll. What looks like a dartboard is that schema I showed a while ago, the enclave flying apart, and the Tengu has failed in his duty to keep the community going. The subject of the Tengu's retirement from the stewardship arises. He longs for the company of his family who live across the water in the Marin Headlands. And finally, Act D. So this is the 4th in the series. Next slide. We open this book with Tamiko on Mount Sutro. She's pitched her tent atop a water tower to avoid all the Ice Age mammals that are still roaming around looking for food. Why is she up here? The right page shows a flashback where the Eagles are demanding she leave the area, being a ghost and all. That's an actual house on 12th Avenue across from Golden Gate Heights Park. I may need permission to depict it in my book, but we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. The back cover is next slide. And that has my website and Instagram handles on the back of the book. And now we come to final remarks. I began this project in 2005 after graduating from the San Francisco Art Institute 2 years previous. I decided to write and illustrate a story honoring my family's tenure in San Francisco since the 1850s. One of the last topics, we explored at the Art Institute was the concept of place. So I began to treat the city as a story character in its own right, but I would clothe this character under radically different conditions. It would be here and now, but in a dimension alongside our own. So it's here and it's now. It's just a different here and now. As it turned out, I had just returned from a 7-week trip to New Zealand, the land of the birds. For 80 million years, there were no predators for these birds to worry about, except for the world's biggest eagle, the Haast's eagle. So I thought, why not turn San Francisco into a haven for bird people? Not birds, not people, just bird people. We have been creating funny animal stories for as long as we've told stories of any kind. And San Francisco is certainly no exception to the story of one people supplanting another, even as we are on unceded lonely land. So I introduced the concept of a medieval culture composed of many task-dedicated clans whose survival depended on their getting along with one another in common worship of their deities. Because this is a story about societies on the brink of collapse when several parties decide to follow their own ambitions to the exclusion of the society at large, I intended the Tengu to be an allegory of where I saw San Francisco and the nation heading. Selfish pursuit of each faction's interests will result in the dissolution, however violent, of the common society in which we all live. And that is that. Not the dissolution, all that. That is the end of the show. So. Thank you all. Thank you all. Any questions? You in the back.
How is there interaction between humans and the bird people? Is it just the somebody like doesn't move for, I mean.
No, it doesn't matter with organic. I mean, anything organic, anything that, I mean, sure, okay, we make each other, right? And we make children and stuff like that, but they're not objects that we make, right? They're living things. Nothing living makes it across the barrier.
So how are the humans at the corporation talking to the eagles there?
Well, they made their way in through that area where in the story, they talk about this being a thin membrane between their world and ours. And so the way they find their way in is they position themselves in this particular area of the Terrell sky space, that circular room in Dion. And that's their portal to get into this world. That's the thinnest part of the boundary between the two worlds. Okay. So it's just it's an exploratory thing. You might think about the first traders that came to talk to the Algonquins, or pick an Indian tribe. You get a seriously advanced technology culture coming in contact with a less advanced technology culture. It doesn't matter if it's between European nations or between the first and the third world. It doesn't matter. They're going to overcome them. Or if disease comes, 19/20ths of the indigenous population of the North and South America got wiped out before the Europeans even met them. And so, I mean, they came on board, they dropped off the smallpox and stuff and all the European diseases they've been inured to because they've been working these beasts of burden where they got a lot of these like cowpox and things like that from. So they were inured to it when the Indians had no defense of any of that. So, that's generally how they do that. But they've been surveilling the society. They have ways that I can't describe here because I'm not that smart. But they have ways of like surveilling this world to find out if it's okay for them to go to, because they're motivated. I mean, World War III is about to break out. The state of the world at that time has been so degraded because we chase a profit motive in this particular storyline so thoroughly and so sociopathically that we left no room for life here. So their only thing is, we're going to Mars. Something like that, yeah. It's our back door.
So are they metaphysical prisoners?
Are they?
Are they metaphysical prisoners?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, they're not actually in a prison.
Well, the prison, it's not really it's the polo ground. It's a literal prison. But the thing is, it has this force field. You talk about the Falcons, right?
Yeah. Okay.
The Falcons are prisoners because they killed off all the pigeons. And the idea here is the doves are going to get bad. So they're going to go down there with spears and they're going to take out the falcons before they can take them out. Yeah, so that's the whole idea about that. So it's not metaphorical or metaphysical at all. They're real prisoners.
They're real prisoners.
The same sense that we're kind of like prisoners here unless we can find a way out. And that's what this corpus has done. It's found out the way to get to this other world. So, yeah.
That's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
You have a lot of characters in how they're interacting with groups of birds. Is there a central story to most of this, or is it a series of different stories?
What it is, I have about 60 characters at a conservative estimate. And so what I have to do is restrict the storyline to just Kizar and Tamiko. And the whole story anchors to their interaction. He's going to carry whatever kind of world this is going to wind up being into the next situation. He's the one that's going to have to corral the defense against the corpus. We're going to invade that world. I mean, that's the next series of books that I cover that in, but I parenthetically cover in this series.
So their goal is?
Whose?
The two that are your main characters.
Their goal is to bring as much of the society that they have left together. And it's operating against a couple of dynamics, one of which is, okay, you guys were forced to work together under very specific conditions. If you remember the inside clans and you're hunting small game, that's all you're going to be doing. Or you hunt big game, or you go into people's houses and you pick cool stuff out. So you have your appointed place in society is pretty rigid in that way. So exactly right, this caste system. So what they're going to try to do is get to the point where everybody gets smarter. And you can get a gull, for instance, doing something that would normally be done by, a stork. I don't know. So these different clans are finding out that we're more than just our, duty designations. So that unleashes tremendous potential, as it can in our society. If we make our kids smart again, you know, I mean, if we really pour our abilities into like making kids as smart as they can be, instead of trying to just train them for a career in the office, we'll unleash potential we cannot dream of, in my book. Yes, you in the back.
Is your intended audience YA?
My intended audience?
YA?
Yeah, YA and above.
Yeah, YA, a graphic novel series for that purpose.
Well, what they even came up with a new term. It's called new adult, which is for in college age.
Okay.
So your freshman in college would be a new adult, and it's supposed to young adult, which would be like 13 and above.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not going to get a lot of stuff in here, not because I'm introducing highfalutin concepts, just because there's so much stuff going on. I'm trying to recreate the frame of mind of a bird. It's way different from ours because they are parallel processor-oriented brains. We have shell-oriented brains, so we have a cortex, we have a neocortex. They're all structures upon structures upon structures. The birds have figured it out. They have much, much smaller brains than we do, but everything's parallel processed. So everything builds off of everything else. This is how a brain is supposed to work. Our brain has 86 billion neurons in it. And you multiply 86 billion by 86 billion, whatever that number is going to be. That's how many possible connections you can get in a brain. So we have a way overcomplicated situation right now. And they say something, by the way, I might make a parenthetical statement about catastrophes. And that's that when civilizations confront an existential catastrophe, things tend to get overcomplicated toward the end. But after the end, things get real simple. You can imagine why. You got a gun? You don't have a gun? Fine. Give me your stuff. You're not going to give me your stuff? Bang. Thanks for your stuff. Right? Somebody's got to elevate the societal discourse somehow, but you got to first believe in society. You got to believe that there are people out there and this tremendous potential is out there waiting to get unleashed.
I think the 13-year-olds would like it as well.
Well, that's the thing. I kind of walk in a line because, again, the violence, there's bloodshed in there. I should warn you right now, if you open the book to like page 10, you're going to see what happens when doves with spears that they hold on to confront falcons with spears they can throw. So, yeah, it gets ugly. But only so ugly. Not so ugly you can't look at it. I mean, you're not going to go, yeah. No, you'll stay engaged. So yeah, it's any other questions or yes, you in the back.
How did you decide which bird clan kind of did what?
Well, it's a good question because what you have is you have societal needs that have to get addressed by somebody, like the vultures. The vultures are great. I have a lot of fun with the vultures. The vultures are responsible for recycling. They recycle for picking up all the guano. They're also responsible for taking care of the dead and processing the dead bodies into new stuff you can use them for. All right, so they're kind of avoided by the rest of the clans. They smell pretty bad. But the vultures are great. They're always good for fun. There's a father and an orphan daughter, or a father and a widower and his daughter. They're really good. And the daughter's really cute. She's fluffy. She's covered with white down, right? So they're at the convocation way in the back. And this heron, the kid, just can't avoid just sticking it to the, what are they doing here? God, they're sticking the place up. Get them out of here. Like that. His mother says, shut that. Grabs his beak to shut it up. Says, you do not want to get on these people's bad side. Just let them be, So that's a little bit later on. When you actually look at the year, it was going to be a year in the life of the Tengu. So the original manifestation of this is 1,200 panels of crudely drawn work that were going to be on WordPress as one a week. So 12 panels a week, 24 panels a week, little individual panels times 52. But what they were going to be doing was I was going to fan out across the city, fan out myself on my own, right? Spread out. Go out and take pictures of the backgrounds of each one of these areas I was going to draw a story in. So the problem with that is that I only have 2 legs, and I got to do all the work, and I don't know WordPress, and I was really bad at it. So I just said, Jesus, God, why don't you just make a graphic novel? And that's how the original Tengu story came about. Yeah, but as far as assigning tasks and stuff, It's pretty basic. I mean, the eagles are these spear-carrying mammoth killers because they're still, like, say, Ice Age mammals going around. So there's woolly mammoths, there's, all kinds of animals still stomping around. This place was considered to be, when the coastline was about 20 miles that way, it was considered to be like a Serengeti. There's that much wildlife here. And so what the Native Americans did is they hide behind these sea stacks that were across the bay. And they'd hide behind there, and they're about 40 feet tall, just about barely break the water's surface today. But back then, they were just big old, rocks, right? So they hide behind them and wait for prey to come by, and they ambush them. We know because we've, done archaeological digs. But as far as like having a ready-made society, where you're going to be doing the same thing your folks did, and your kid's going to do the same thing you do, like there's, you can find a whole number of inspirations in that little, realm of activity. Because there's only about a half a dozen to a dozen of each one of these bird species. There's 10,000 plus bird species that we know of. So I had to be pretty selective about which species I was going to put in the story, and also which ones just look cool as hell. I mean, Garuda is based on a harpy eagle. Have you guys seen that thing? It's got 5-inch long talons. It kills monkeys. I mean, these things are just incredible animals. People have venerated birds throughout history. It's on our Great Seal of the President of the United States, for God's sake. It's on our quarter. It's everywhere you look. I mean, we've got, what do we got in this society? We've got Donald Duck, Daffy Duck, the gods, but if you go back, they taught us, if you consider the New Guineans believe they taught us how to dance, how to sing, how to dress, how to mate, how to attract a mate, how to have kids, how to take care of your kids, how to build a nest, how to build things. These guys have been around for, our common ancestor goes back 350 million years. Birds in their modern form have existed for about 130 million years, and they have 2 extra chromosomes. We got X and Y. You think that's enough? They got W and Z, just in case. They survived the freaking asteroid collision. These are dinosaurs. They're actually dinosaurs. They're not descendants of dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs. So they're miraculous creatures to study, and that's the main thing that really engaged me for this whole project, because I was sitting as a graveyard shift stationary engineer, temporary status, wondering what my future is going to be like. And I just said, well, eventually I'm going to get a pension. Eventually I'm going to get Social Security. When I have those things, am I taken care of? Well, the main thing to be taken care of there is figuring out what's going to make you want to wake up in the morning. Giving yourself a purpose. This is my purpose. I don't know what else to do, but just mute and continue. Do it every day. I do this every day. This is, as you can tell, it's a little bit on the complex side. But if you want to tell a story, tell the story. Don't throw out all these, ancillary details. You want to engage people. So I've always been fascinated by the idea of storytelling. If you go to movie cinema, you're going to a big place and there's a big fire that's a screen. You're with a bunch of people in the dark and you're listening to a story being told. It can't fail, and it hasn't failed. It's the center point of our culture. So that's one thing I think we have to also learn how to do again. We've had stories told for us. We have to learn how to tell stories ourselves. The mic could pick that up. Excuse me.
What are some of your favorite authors?
Authors? Well, it's H.G. Wells, the master. I love me some H.G. Wells.
Okay.
I was following him as a little kid. Curry, the original movie when it came out, the George Powell movie in 1960, game changer.
Okay.
I got given a book about the invention of the stories of Jules Verne, between Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, and Classics Illustrated. That was it. That's all you need. Yeah, I loved it. So science fiction and fantasy are considered to be kind of, it's frivolous. Everybody's into it today.
Is this
Everybody.
fantasy?
Huh?
Is this fantasy?
It is. It's funny you should mention that. I had trouble trying to figure that out myself. it could be considered science fiction because of the transdimensional aspects of it and the many universes idea, the many worlds theory. It says there are billions of worlds that are traveling alongside. They're only differentiated by one event each. So if you got barely nicked by a car as opposed to just a car missing you completely or hitting you full on, they're different timelines. 3 different possible occurrences. That's why there's a huge multiplicity of worlds. These worlds, the world that I have of the corpus, you can think of this as 3 worlds, okay? This is Earth is 0, in my theory anyway, this is the way I think about it. This is where all stories are invented and told. Earth 1 is where the corpus lives, and it's way worse off than us, but it's contemporaneous with us. It's here and it's now, only it's way bad. It's kind of like, okay, remember It's a Wonderful Life? And you had Bedford Falls, Pottersville, or Potterstown, or whatever that was. Very, dystopian. I didn't want to use that word at all today, but here it comes. And the world of the bird people is eternal. It's like, we haven't always been here. They started doing, we're not really sure when the Northwest Indians came up with totem poles, but we're pretty sure it's hundreds, not thousands of years old. And they were only able to make the magnificent totem poles that we see today because power tools, but they still have that tradition and that storytelling tradition. I should make mention also, as long as we're talking about unceded alone land, they are very, very jealous of their, well, I wouldn't say jealous, but they're very possessive of their stories. If you're telling stories about a raven, you better belong to the Raven clan. Same thing goes for the wolf, the Thunderbird clans, the bear clans, all these different clans. They have the clans, they have propriety. They have, like, this is our line of legends. I can't wait to find out what happens when they find out about Raven in my story. Could be tense, I don't know, but I should probably apologize ahead of time to them before I actually let them know that I have a story that involves Raven. I'm sure it's not that bad, but any culture can take propriety over anything that culture is specifically responsible for. It could even be a point where you could, say, well, that's ours. You can't tell that story. That's our story. Really anybody can tell any story about anything to my book. I have to believe that because,
Yeah.
So,
It's true.
yeah.
We can probably take one more question.
Okay, one more question. Make it a good one. Oh, yes, you in the back.
This is just because I think that's such a beautiful drawing.
Thank you.
And so that's the Tengu, right?
Hi.
And what is he holding? What's the?
It's a fan. One of the Tengus. It's an Ailanthus feather fan, stylized as hell. Because all these gods they have, or these a lot of the mythical figures have totems or attributes or artifacts that they know, that everybody knows belongs to them and them alone. And the Ailanthus feather fan is one. It's a thing that allows them to fly. He doesn't have any wings. These guys don't know what wings are until they see one of their gods. Only the gods have wings. All of them are like Daffy Duck or Donald Duck. Well, I'll take that back. Daffy Duck has flown on occasion. I've seen it, man. But Donald Duck, no. Donald Duck is strictly civilian. All right. No pants, but strictly civilian. But yeah, so it's an important dividing line between humans and birds. Is like, what are you going to say that bird people can do but can't do? And they can do and can't do. One of the things they can't do is fly. The only thing they know that flies are flies, or something like that, or a bat, or something like that. They don't think about taking to the air. There is an exception, though. The pelicans are freaking obsessed with learning how to glide. And so Fort Funson is their domain. And there's a scene where they strap on these clumsy, it's like the original flying machines. You see these guys like fall off a cliff, this really crappily put together cardboard box wings, right? Yeah, these guys are obsessed to the point of being really close friends with the Osprey clan, because the Osprey clan are healers. And they often, this precipitous fall off of like Fort Funston or up in the observation deck. We made an observation deck. It's called Inspiration Point, and it's up on facing, you might know it. It's out in, the golf course it's Seacliff. It's near Seacliff. There's an actual platform you should go down. But these guys know just what to do with that, right? So the vulture's going, yeah, come on down, you know. We'll make something good out of you for a change. So they're always walking around with like broken limbs and stuff like that because they take the plunge occasionally. It's a cultural thing. They got to learn because one day they will fly. Their god is the Rook, that gigantic thing underneath San Bruno Mountain. And they take inspiration from that guy. That's their man. That's who they pray to. So yeah, I mean, they take inspiration the same way we do. You know, so in that sense, they are just great. You know, they can inspire you. You know, if I write it right, you know, they'll inspire you. If I don't, well, next page. Oh. Right. Well, I think that concludes tonight's exercise in diversion. Thank you so much. I love you all.
One more hand for Bruce. Yay!